All right, Urban Meyer's here, big noon kickoff. Okay, my whole life, it feels like LSU's got the best players, even better than Alabama. They can't pass. The passing's always an issue. And I watched them last week, and I'm like, you can talk about Clemson and Alabama. I wouldn't want anything to do. This Joe Burrow kid, it's like LSU's a different program.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. They look better than Clemson's looked this year. Tell me about Joe Burrow. Did you know him, your connections to him?
Well, first, LSU, when I was in the SEC, every time we played them, I remember they'd come out of the tunnel and you'd look and say, how are we going to block these guys? That's the best-looking team or one of the best-looking teams. Joe Burrow, we recruited him at Ohio State. He's from Athens, Ohio. His father is a longtime defensive coach, was Frank Solich's defense coordinator forever. Great family, incredible kid, tough as nails. He's developed into a pro prospect, and I've talked to him quite often, and couldn't be more proud of what Joe's done.
How did he get out of Ohio?
Well, he played for us for 3 years.
And then he moves on?
He did a grad transfer. Dwayne Haskins and Joe had the battle, 2 years ago in spring, and it was inches from who was our starting quarterback, and Dwayne won the battle. Joe left as a graduate transfer and obviously starting his second year now.
I mean, he's the real deal.
Yeah, he's really what he's done so well is getting the ball out. And like you said, the LSU offense is different now. They're opening it up. You know, it used to be kind of a downhill, which is great when they had those big backs and all that, but they're going to score a ton of points. You did that against Texas, threw for 471.
That's incredible.
Unbelievable.
So listen, I'm going to make you uncomfortable here, and this is my job. So I defended Harbaugh the whole time. I think he's a great coach. But now, if you're a quarterback, you got to get the quarterback right. So I've defended him for years. I'm watching Shea Patterson. I watched Shea Patterson at a high school camp. Okay, the line's better. The receivers are better. That offense, it ain't getting better. Like I watched, and Shea Patterson's always reminded me, there's a little Johnny Manziel. It's a little loose for my taste, a little small for my taste, but he's got talent. Coach, what's wrong with Michigan's offense now? It's like 4 years now.
We said this in the preseason that when you change offenses, and from my understanding when I watch them, it's a drastic change. It takes a minute to get going. Yeah, it's been very disappointing. And Shea Patterson, the one fumble was inexcusable. However, the other one was a responsibility of the tailback. He was stripped from behind. Don't give up on this offense. If Donovan Peoples-Jones gets back, that's another big-time weapon, but they got to start doing what they said they're going to do, and that's playing space, and they're not doing that yet.
They're not doing that.
They're not doing that.
You know, I mean, sometimes, I think of you as sort of a CEO, but your offenses were clever. You gave your quarterbacks a lot of responsibility. You know, Jim, even at Stanford, San Francisco, he likes power football. Is it possible that Jim is kind of a conservative guy a little bit, and with that tight, he's a little tight, that can rub off on coaches? Do you feel like that Jim needs to lighten up the offense, loosen up a little bit, be a little more creative?
Yeah, I don't know. It's him. You know, I don't. Obviously, it's his program,
right.
And the way the game unfolded last week, it was a bunch of runs right in a row. And I was waiting for him to once again. You're talking about a complete talent mismatch in the perimeter, and I kept waiting. I think like a lot of the fans are, get the ball out there, let these athletes go against an Army athlete in the back end, and I mean, it's just obvious that Army doesn't have the same athletes that they have. So yeah, it was. They got very conservative. I think they, I heard comments about wanting to bleed the clock, et cetera. But, if they want to play athletes in space, they got to start doing that because they do have the athletes.
Oh, no. Michigan's these are the best receivers I think he's had.
Yeah.
And it does, by the way. It takes 3 and 4 and 5 years to get the baby rolling most of the time. All right, I want to talk. So a lot of people said coming into the season, Lynn Swann just resigned USC's AD. Clay Helton could be in trouble. And then they make a change at coordinator, and they get an air raid guy, which is not USC's history, like tailback you. And then they sign a bunch of quarterbacks. They got about 9, I swear to God, in camp. And this 3-star small school kid named Keaton Slovis, freshman. Yeah, I mean, incredible. He literally walks on. The starter gets hurt. They throw him in. Coach, his poise is incredible.
Yeah.
He had to ask the coaches during camp if he could go to his high school prom. He's like a kid. He's like 18 years old. How do you explain him? What do you see when you watch him?
I see what you saw. I saw poise, and once again, it's not some preseason game. That's a Pac-12 game against a very good Stanford team and a guy that was extremely accurate and started dropping dimes all over the place. And I think a lot of the country, myself included, really didn't know much about him. but you'll certainly hear a lot about him.
He's got a little bit of mobility. What would you tell a quarterback? You're at the Coliseum. You're starting. He does, when I first saw Dak Prescott in the NFL, Mississippi State kid goes to the NFL.
Right.
He had a preseason game in Los Angeles, and Dak was so poised. And I'm like, I don't like his throwing motion. I don't love Dak. He reminded me, actually, of a better Tebow in terms of NFL potential. And I watched this kid, and I'm like, I can't imagine how nervous I would be or my kid would be in front of 80,000 people. Have you ever had players like that, Coach? And is it a quality you look for? Is that they're just never nervous?
I think that's rare to find. Dwayne Haskins is the guy that was very nervous until his junior year. And then finally he became that way. He was one of those guys that just would go out there and perform with, just no issues whatsoever. So I think that especially the thing that everybody's got to remember, he's a true freshman.
Yeah, he's 18 years old.
I've never had a true freshman. Not a quarterback. I had a Percy Harvin as a true freshman that just
Florida.
went and played right now.
Yeah.
But a true freshman, I don't think I've ever had one that just no nerves, especially in a big crowd in a Pac-12 game. I thought that was incredible.
I said this. We largely acknowledge as a country who the good coaches are. Okay, Nick Saban wins, and Belichick, and Urban Meyer, and Bill Parcells, and we know the guys that can coach. But there is something to be said about likability. Brian Kelly's gruff, and his face explodes, and he's got the cold weather, and he's yelling and screaming. And I think a lot of people look at Brian Kelly, and they're like, well, and I think to myself, private school, cold weather, kind of isolated, not really in a conference. It's a religious, academically tough. And he's knocking out 10, 11, 12 wins a year. And I'm like, it's hard. Not everybody can get into Notre Dame. It's a little Northwestern. There are some – I think Brian Kelly, he does this, Urban, and this is how I've always watched coaches. You did this very well. It's why you're a great coach. Notre Dame adapts at half. Now, in the NFL, everybody does. And you're not going to call out names, but I'll watch some college teams, and I'm like, they don't have the capability of changing. Notre Dame against Louisville was lost for the first 20 minutes. In the second half, that defense was unbelievable on a clever offense. Inside the game, coaches talking to coaches, what do they say about Notre Dame's Brian Kelly?
Here's why he is so respected among the coaching profession, myself included. He's won at all levels. And I think a lot of times coaches get thrust into big-time jobs, and you never know. He's won at Grand Valley State. He's won at Central Michigan. He's won at Cincinnati. He's won at Notre Dame. He does it right way. I'm always been a big fan. I'm friends with him. I think he's one of the top coaches in America, and I think he's done a great job. Here's the issue that Notre Dame deals with. They don't have a conference. So how do you evaluate if Notre Dame has a great year? There's only one way to get a real ring at Notre Dame, and that's win the national title.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, and then where in other schools, where Ohio State, we didn't win the national title, but you get a Big Ten championship ring, so you can say the season was a success.
Yeah, if you beat Michigan, you win the Big Ten champ, you still get some love.
Right. And Notre Dame, there's only one way. And we all know what was it, 88 was the last time that's happened.
Yeah. I like Nick Saban. I've interviewed him. He's been very nice, been very kind to me. I like Nick. But sometimes, Nick, this is the thing that Nick drives me nuts on. I would tell Nick if he was sitting here. Nick's like, listen, we'll play anybody. I mean, we can't get games here. Yeah. Nick. When USC ran the world in college football, they were playing Ohio State in Columbus. They were playing Virginia Tech. They were playing – nobody wants to play Ohio State. You had games in Oklahoma. Oklahoma came to you. Nick controls 4 games a year. He'll play you as long as he doesn't have to go north of Atlanta. And I love Nick. But Urban, you would go to your athletic director and say, you can't tell me they just scheduled Oklahoma and they didn't say, Urban, you want to play Bob Stoops? You had to at some point sign off and say, yeah, I want to play that game, didn't you?
I did. And you usually sit with your athletic director, and the conference or the schedule philosophy at Florida as well as Ohio State was, you had the built-in non-conference with Florida State. So
you
we
always
made
had
that
game.
decision. We were not going to go play somewhere far away, et cetera. At Ohio State, Gene Smith and I, we had Cal. Who knew Cal was going to be down a little bit? You had Cal, you had Virginia Tech, you had Oklahoma. They have Oregon coming. And the schedule philosophy is play a big-time program home and home. And that's for your fans. That's for the college football playoffs. So you get, the schedule strength. So that's the involvement I had.
Did you like playing those big games out of conference?
I like it.
Like to win.
Yeah, I like to win. But I get it. You have to do that, in our opinion. I think Alabama's changed it, but that's way down the road when they're going to Wisconsin. And I think they're going home and home with Wisconsin.
Yeah, they're going now.
Yeah.
Because they're getting ripped. And by the way, it should be said this, with all the social media and the phones, you got to give kids more. You can't play Citadel. Like, the bottom line, in the South, it's hot, 62-3. You know, you put Wisconsin in the stadium, and it's close, people stick. Right. I mean, that's part of the game now. You got to. I think the SEC is kind of figuring it out. These kids, they don't want to watch blowouts.
Yeah, but you have to figure, too, the SEC is getting 2 teams a year in the playoff, and Ohio State's not. So does schedule strength really matter? That's the question. That, you know, does it matter? And should it matter more? Those are all debates that I remember Gene and I talking about it. And you can say schedule strength matters, but wait a minute, does it? You know, if Ohio State doesn't get in the playoff or another school doesn't get in the playoff and they're playing 9 conference games and another big-time opponent and they don't get in, yet someone's playing 8 conference games and then maybe not the strongest non-conference, but they do get 2 in. Those are all conversations you have to have.
Finally, Urban, before he came on the show today, LeVar Arrington's a great player, former Nittany Lion, Penn State, played in the NFL for 8 years, so he's now a high school football coach. Yeah. And right before Urban came on the show, we got a picture of this. LeVar's like, hey, Coach, could you give me a little play? And here's Urban. So what did you give him as a play? Is it kind of a little...
I can't tell you, but it's I love LeVar, man. He's a defensive, one of the greatest players of all time, sitting there getting ready to coach up offense.
Did you give him... No, some high school kids got to face Urban Meyer's Statue of Liberty play.
It's a nice perimeter run with a play action off of it. It's gonna work. It's gonna work.
That's so unfair. Some DB out there, 17-year-old kid's got Urban Meyer's wizardry, and he's just going to get faked out for a touchdown. Good seeing you, Coach.
Good seeing you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.